I used to work at a 7-Eleven here in the United States, and the scariest thing that ever happened to me there was also the single most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me in my life. It happened on a particularly quiet night, and I was still kind of hungover from going out drinking the night before, so I wasn't even paying attention when the guy walked into the store. I heard the door sliding open, I heard his footsteps as he walked up to the counter, and then right when I was about to lift my head up to ask him what he wanted, he just slammed something down on the counter in front of me. I remember the first thing being the red splatter on my t-shirt. It was plain white, and the moment his hand impacted on the counter, all these little red specks appeared on my shirt. I already recoiled from the shock of having his hand slammed down in front of me, but when I saw what he just slammed down next to the register, I recoiled even further. It was a tongue, an actual tongue. Even though it was soaked in blood, I could recognize the deep ridge running down the middle of it. It sounds like such a cliche when I think about it now, but I now know what people mean when they say that they were frozen in fear. The whole thing was an assault on my senses, and I think it just short-circuited my fight-or-flight mechanism to the point where I just didn't know what to do. Then the look in the guy's eyes as he stared at me, so calm but intense, with eyes so wide and unblinking that it was like he didn't have eyelids at all. It was only when he spoke that I actually found the will to move, and all he said to me was, "Call 911." I bolted into the back office, locked the door behind me, and immediately called the cops. All the while I watched the guy on the cameras just standing there at the register. He didn't move at all. He just seemed to be looking down and staring at the mess he'd left on the counter. And given the gruesome nature of my emergency, there was a police patrol car and 2 cops pulling up outside in just a matter of minutes. The guy didn't put up any kind of fight when they moved to arrest him. He just held his wrists, allowed them to put the handcuffs on him, then let the cops take him away. Once he was safely out of the store, I walked out of the office, trying not to look at what was on the counter, then told the cops everything I knew. It obviously wasn't all that much, but as I was talking to them, I noticed a few more police surrounding a car in the parking lot that still had the door open. I called the store manager from the McDonald's across the street, telling him that the cops had to close the store because it was an active crime scene. They rushed down to see what was going on, even though it was their day off, and after telling them what had happened, I went home to decompress. From what I heard later, the guy had gotten into an argument with his wife while out driving somewhere. Then at some point, he'd snapped, pulled up into a parking lot, stabbed her to death, then cut her tongue out. Then, for some reason, he picked our 7-Eleven to walk into to slam the tongue he'd cut out of her mouth down onto the countertop. I was allowed to take a little bit of time off of work after the whole thing, as I just couldn't face going back there so soon. Even when I did go back, I was on edge the whole time for my first couple of shifts, and I just couldn't seem to shake the image of that bloody tongue just lying on the countertop right in front of me. The thing I just can't seem to shake is that it wasn't enough for the guy to actually stab and kill his own wife. He had to reach into her mouth afterwards and cut her tongue out. How completely insane with fury does a person have to be to do that? Like, what could possibly possess someone to do something so horrifying to their own spouse? The guy didn't look like a monster either. He didn't look evil or deranged. All that gave his mental state away was that crazy look in his eyes, the one that had me frozen in fear. It just haunts me that seemingly normal people are capable of things like that. I work at a 7-Eleven part-time in between classes, and earlier this year, we got a little rush of customers in the early afternoon one time. I served 2 guys for coffee and smokes, and at the back of the line, there's this kid, no older than maybe 11 or 12, just waiting there patiently with a backpack in his hand. I actually thought that he looked kind of cute, like a little gentleman out doing some grocery shopping for his mom or something. He gets to the front of the line and I ask him, "What can I help you with, sir?" in a kind of jokey, playful way. Without a hint of emotion on his face, he just reaches into his backpack, pulls out a gun, and says, "Give me all the money." When he pointed it at me, I wasn't sure if it was real or not, because where the hell would a 12-year-old kid get their hands on a loaded gun like that? It's not like the 7-Eleven I work at is in some high crime area or whatever. It's actually located in a pretty nice place, and although I've heard one or two stories from coworkers about the trouble at the store, nothing had ever happened to me personally. There was one other guy in the store at the time, and I looked over at him to see him kind of smiling at the kid. Smiling and frowning, like he was amused but disapproved of the kid playing some dumb childish prank. I don't know guns, but I figured this guy did, so I tried calling this kid's bluff and asked him something like, "You shouldn't point toys like that, sweetie. The cops might think it's real." The kid responds by cocking the gun, and it has this real metallic sound that sends this kind of shock of fear running through me. I didn't know of any toy guns that made such a realistic sound, and as if to illustrate that he wasn't joking around, the kid pointed the gun in the air and actually fired a shot that went right over my head. After my ears got done ringing, and I came to, I heard "Give me all the money" in the same monotone, emotionless way, and I didn't hesitate in doing what he asked. I put as much cash as I could onto the countertop, then watched him fill his backpack with it before he just walked out of the store. I think the thing that scared me so much about it was that the kid just didn't seem to realize the gravity of the situation. He definitely seemed like he had something missing about him, like he didn't understand that he could have actually killed someone over whatever dumb thing he wanted to buy with that money, be it video games or candy or whatever it was. At least a grown-up armed robber understands that a gun is just a means of getting what he wanted, and it's not a good idea to fire it or whatever, just in case they accidentally shoot someone in the face. I get the feeling that even if I'd even tried to resist or tell the kid no, he'd have just shot me, because it's what he assumed he should do. It's almost surreal to me how the closest I've ever come to death is at the hands of a child, someone who should have been so innocent and carefree and full of love, but instead just felt nothing. We're going back almost 10 years ago now, but one morning I dropped my son off at school and then drove over to a nearby 7-Eleven with my infant daughter. It was pretty early in the morning, so there were only one or two other customers, and one of them was this older-looking guy with a walker who was slowly making his way around the store. I didn't pay him too much attention other than feeling kind of sorry for him. Then I picked up the few items I needed, then headed out to my car. Right as I'm putting my daughter in her car seat, I hear a voice behind me. I turn, and it's the old man with the walker, only there's something weirdly different about him than when I saw him in the 7-Eleven. He was walking upright, not leaning on the walker, and his voice sounded much younger than you would have expected from just looking at him. I remember all he said was, "Cute kid." Then as I turned around, I only got the slightest look at the guy and his brand new posture before he slammed the walker into the back of my legs. The force made my knees buckle, and I almost fell right on top of my young daughter. I'm not exactly the tallest woman in the world, so the height reduction from my knees buckling had me falling forward into my open car door, and I had really tried not to crush her as I fell. I honestly thought that he was trying to get me, which was bad enough, but when he grabbed me by the hair and started to drag me up and off of my daughter, I realized he was trying to get to her instead. I honestly didn't think that I could get any more terrified, but the realization that he was actually trying to take my infant daughter away from me was just too much to bear. I remember letting out the loudest, most ear-splitting scream I've ever let out in my life, begging him not to take my baby. He was so much stronger and faster than he looked, and I guess that was all part of his fiendish scheme to have everyone let their guards down around him. It honestly seems like divine intervention now that I look back at it. But someone was just pulling into the small parking lot just as he almost had a hand on my daughter, and seeing the struggle had them instinctively honking their horn over and over in a bid to break it up. I think they figured it was just an incident of spousal abuse or something, because They were just honking and didn't get out of their car until I screamed over and over again, "He's trying to take my baby." The moment they heard that, they came bursting out of their driver's side door. But then the guy sprinted past the passenger side and out towards the main highway. The second he did, another car comes speeding up and stops by him, which I first thought might have been another person coming to tackle him or something. But instead, the guy climbs into the second car and it speeds off with a screech of its tires. What horrified me in the aftermath was that it was quite clearly a well-planned and almost perfectly executed attempt to kidnap my daughter, and I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit if it had worked on a previous occasion. After the kind stranger calmed me down, they helped me call the cops as I tried my best to calm my daughter down in turn. She was still too young to really know what was going on, but she picked up on my distress enough to be wailing and crying until I managed to lull her off to sleep. The cops who arrived at the 7-Eleven a short while after said that they'd never heard of such a thing happening there before, but they were able to check the street cameras outside the 7-Eleven to try and get a clear image of the getaway car's number plate. I stuck around long enough to find out that the car's plates came back as stolen, and the cop I spoke to said that there was a good chance that they just ditched the vehicle somewhere after wiping it down for prints. If they had already planned such a detailed operation out, there was a good chance they planned for that too. The only saving grace was that the officer assured me that my report was a step towards catching them. A small step, but a step nonetheless. The horrifying experience I went through that morning wasn't for nothing, as not only did the cops now have a description of the guy who tried to do the kidnapping, but their failure to kidnap my daughter meant that they'd probably hesitate before trying the same plan again. I took a lot of comfort in that idea, and if it wasn't for the cop taking the time to reassure me of that, I don't think I'd have dealt with the trauma of it as half as well as I did in the months that followed. But I did a lot of praying too. Desperate prayers that whoever had planned such a horrifying kidnap would never, ever be successful, and that no one else would have to endure the pure horror that I had.
During a time when I was done with college and wasn't able to find a job right away, I took a job at a 7-Eleven because I needed money. I worked mostly late night and overnight shifts. What I liked about this was that there wasn't many people that came in, and I would have a lot of free time by myself to play on my phone or listen to podcasts. I was always a night owl, but I didn't really like staying up all night when I would have to work those hours. Anyways, I'd been working there for maybe about 2 months, and one night I was working by myself very late. It was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but I don't remember the exact time. The location that our 7-Eleven is at is on a road just off the highway, and we're really busy during the day, but not so much at night. We got several customers early on, and for the first few hours, I had quite a bit to do actually. But now, we would get only like one person every 20 minutes or so, and I started to get bored. I noticed in the back corner of the store where we had the soda machine and icy machines, there was a spill on the floor. Seeing as though we didn't have any customers, I decided to go over and mop it up. I left the counter and walked over to the back near the bathrooms where we kept the mop, then over to the corner where the spill was. I saw the spill. It looked like Coca-Cola. Thankfully, the floor hadn't gotten all gross and sticky yet, and the mop was working well. As I was mopping, I suddenly heard the sound of the front door opening and somebody walk inside. Realizing I wasn't at my counter, I rested the mop against the wall and looked over to see who had entered our store. Where I was, you couldn't see the front door, and whoever was in the front door couldn't see me either. I could, however, just see the front counter. I saw somebody standing at the front counter with their back to me. They seemed to be looking around as though they were looking for someone who worked there. Realizing I needed to go back there, I took a couple of steps over to them, and as I did, I noticed them turn and their head went to the side. They hadn't noticed me, but I did see them looking to the side, revealing that they were wearing some sort of mask. It appeared to be a really creepy-looking clown mask. I then noticed that he was wearing a dark blue jacket, and his right hand was in his pocket. Immediately I got a bad feeling, as if he was up to no good, and possibly looking to rob the place. I froze in place, telling myself to stop being scared for no reason, and to just go. I thought, what are the odds he's trying to rob the store? It had never happened before. But as I was standing there, I watched the man then go around and behind the counter himself. As a pure reaction to this, I jumped behind the nearest aisle and hid. I could hear the man messing with stuff behind the counter, and it sounded like he was going through the cash register. I figured he was in fact robbing the place, and as I was hiding back there, I decided to call the police. I got up my phone and dialed, but as soon as I heard the 911 operator answer the phone, I suddenly heard the man go quiet from whatever he was doing and say something. Out of fear, I quickly hung up the phone and held my breath. I heard the man shout from behind the counter, asking who was inside and to come out now. He spoke in a loud and demanding tone. I wasn't going to, though. I was way too scared to move. At this point, I just wanted to get out of there. I knew our store was being robbed, but they didn't pay me enough to try to stop this guy. I just wanted to call the police again, but obviously the man could hear me if I did. I heard his footsteps moving out from behind the counter and get a little bit closer to me. But then they stopped, and I didn't hear anything. I was not moving a muscle, and I was being as quiet as I possibly could be. Then, I heard the door to the building open and shut. I guessed that the guy was leaving, because I didn't hear anything else for about a minute after that. Finally, I got up and slowly took a few steps out. I still heard nothing, and knew this had to mean that the guy was gone. I walked over to the counter to examine what exactly the man had done, and how much he had took. When I got there, though, I passed by the front of the counter where I could see clearly outside. I saw that the man was standing right in front of the door, looking inside, with his creepy clown mask still on. I jumped back when I saw this, and the man started to walk inside. I ran back towards the end of the store where I had hid before, and I heard the man come in and shout at me to come out and stop hiding like a baby. His footsteps were fast approaching mine, and I knew I probably wouldn't be able to hide from him this time. I was ducking down and quietly moving through aisles to try to hide from the man. This continued for probably a minute, and I knew I couldn't keep this up for much longer. I could hear where the man was, but suddenly, I heard the man yell a curse word and then run back to the front and leave the building again. I was confused, but this time decided to stay hiding. Out of curiosity, though, I took a quick peek outside. This time, I saw a police car in the parking lot, and it turned its flashing lights on as I saw another car starting to drive away. I stayed hidden until I saw the police stopping the man, and I knew it was safe. I guess my call to the police had gone through, even though I hadn't been able to speak with them. Luckily, the man was caught, and after this night, I decided I didn't want to work overnights again. I still worked there for another few months, even working late shifts, but didn't have to work by myself again.
My name is Jordan, and at the time I was 12, and I had just gotten my first Facebook account, and I had my friends and family friends on there. My mom and I had just finished shopping at our local Walmart, and we were headed to our car. This time, which was unusual, we parked near the back of the parking lot. As we left the building, I glanced over to the side, and I saw a particularly tan and skinny guy. He was wearing one of those neon green Nike shirts with black pants. His hair was messed up and shiny, and he was smoking a cigarette. We finally made it to our car and started unloading. Side note, my mom is very religious. She always wants to see the sunny side of situations, and that nobody can be that dangerous. We started loading our car with groceries when the man was suddenly behind us. He was especially close to my mom's purse. Maybe he's just a druggie wanting money? He grabs some groceries and starts handing them to us. He then says,
"Oh, I'm just here to help, you know?"
Which was weird because he wasn't even wearing anything that said he was an employee. After he helps with the groceries, he's now right behind me, extremely close. My mom said something to me which mentioned my name, and the man goes,
"Jordan? That's a very pretty name. Here you go, Jordan."
He hands me a half-eaten candy bar. I take it after shooting my mom a glance with the "what the heck" kind of look. She doesn't see a problem. "Where are you two ladies headed?" he asks. My mom replies, but I didn't want to hear what she said. But I got in the car and immediately threw the candy away. I told her that was weird and uncomfortable, and she pretty much blows me off, just saying he was being nice. Something didn't feel right though. It gave me chills in my core. We made it home, which I immediately noticed a beat-up truck slowing around the corner of the street and slowly going by. We went on with our day, and it was about 3 to 4 days later that I then received a message on Facebook from an account with a male profile picture. I was new to Facebook, and I wasn't sure how to set it up or how to manage who could message me. It didn't look like the guy, but the message was implied that it was.
Hi Jordan, this is Mike from Walmart.
I very obviously didn't respond because I knew it was creepy enough. My mistake was not telling my parents. See, my parents have sheltered me from the internet for my whole life. If they found out I was ever in danger online, they'd take away my electronics and I'd have to go back to having all of my devices monitored with no freedom. So I didn't reply. An hour or two goes by, and I start receiving calls, and even more calls. I had to silence my Facebook notifications. It all started at,
Why are you ignoring me?
to,
I'm going to kill you.
until he finally stopped. It was scary, but I assume people online threatened anything they could. Fast forward a month or so, and I then get an email.
Hi Jordan, it's me, Mike again. How are you?
I don't reply. It goes on again for another week, email after email. Each one got a little meaner. The last email I remember was the worst. It was basically him confessing his love for me, telling me how beautiful he thought I was, and how I wasn't weird and that he loved me. As the email continued, it got more and more disgusting and graphic. The end telling me how he wants to sexually assault me and slice my throat. I was terrified and also disgusted. I didn't tell my mom, which I really wish I did. I'm still so mad with myself that I didn't speak about it. I'd always thought I could be different from all the other girls if I was ever put into a situation like that. I told myself I wouldn't ever let anyone silence me, but I was really scared I'd be in trouble. I reported and deleted all of the emails and the pictures of them from my phone, which I was really stupid to do. Only the next day, I get another email from a different account. All it said was,
I'm going to find your house and kill you.
I stayed up all night for 4 nights straight. Another few days go by, and it's almost time for bed, and I step outside to let my miniature husky do her business. Our garage overhead door is locked pretty much every night by my dad, who has the keys. My older siblings have snuck out before, so only he has the keys. He told me to close the garage door when I came in and that he'd lock it before he went to bed. Thank God I locked the garage side door. After my husky's done, I call her in and I then close the garage overhead door. It was heavy, so it's not like wind could pull it up. As I go to close it, I see the same red beat-up truck that came by months ago. I can still remember waking up to a banging noise on one of the downstairs doors. I looked at my phone and memorized the time, 4:37 a.m. The banging and rattling of the downstairs doors went on for what seemed like an hour, but it was only about 10 to 15 minutes. I didn't sleep for a while. Maybe it was a coincidence and some high guy stumbled to our house. I don't know. The next morning, my mom walked outside and she found our garage overhead door was wide open. I guess she didn't hear the banging or the door rattling. My room was upstairs right over the garage, while my parents' room was at the other end of the house. I know I closed that garage door. I can't help but think that it was him that night. My parents still don't know about what happened.
I spend my days as a humble worker at 7-Eleven. More specifically, I was a store manager and franchise owner. I was no software engineer or doctor, and while my family did have their opinions on what I did for a living, my job paid rather well. I was a very different man in my past, but deciding to go the route of franchising a store was a more hands-on career path that mostly kept me in check. It was a low-stress but high-labor job, and that was honestly perfect for me. The job was almost therapeutic to me. It gave me something to take care of, something to look forward to every day. Of course, I couldn't do this alone. Working with me in my daytime shifts were workers Molly and Adam. Molly and Adam were young. They were working there to pay off their college tuition. We all considered ourselves like a family to each other. Molly, Adam, and I grew super close to each other in our time working there. They were like the kids I never had, and this naturally made me a little protective over them. We would always encounter weird or upset customers, and it was usually me who had to stand up for them. I didn't want anything to happen to them. They were so young. Nothing bad had happened to Molly or Adam yet, and I was grateful for that. But one early morning, that changed. It was a Tuesday morning. I want to say the incident occurred around 9 a.m. The sun was out and things seemed to be going normal. This time of day was always peaceful. There was usually never any problems. Eventually, a blue sedan pulled into the parking lot. Inside of the car was a rather average-looking middle-aged man. He stepped out of the car and started filling it with gas. While the pump was going, he then proceeded to the front of the store. As per their training, Molly and Adam greeted him. The man just nodded and started walking around the aisles. He then looped back around the store, approached Molly, and started flirting with her. Molly was visibly uncomfortable, and while I wanted to go to the back of the store and do my inventory logging, I couldn't do this, not with the man hitting on Molly like that. Adam, however, told me that he could handle the man if he started acting any weirder, and naturally, I trusted him. I reluctantly stepped in the back room and started counting down and logging all the items that were there. While I was doing this, however, I kept looking back towards the man to see what he was doing. It seemed like the man was looking back at me as well. This was odd for a number of reasons. Customers aren't supposed to be this close to the back of the store, and he kept awkwardly peering in through the utility room. To make things worse, every time I looked back, the man started to try and act busy. It was like he was trying to pass time or look natural for some reason. I stepped out of the room and asked the man if I could help him. He seemed to awkwardly and rudely shun me off and keep pacing around the store pretending like he was looking for something. For some reason, I decided to ignore all these red flags and continue my work in the back. Eventually, while Molly was passing by the back room, she whispered to me that the man was making her very uncomfortable. I told her that once I finished with the shelf I was working on, I would quickly go outside and help her. I essentially told her to hang in there and wait behind Adam. It was super confusing what the man even wanted. He seemed to have stopped flirting with Molly completely and was instead focused on trying to peer through the back door for some reason. As annoying as this was, I just wanted to get through my work. I had one last crate of granola bars to log down and I didn't want this weird man to stop that. But that's when I heard a commotion coming from the main room. "Excuse me, sir, you're not allowed to be back there. What are you trying to pull off?" "Call the police, Adam," I heard Molly exclaim right after that. I quickly ran out of the storage room to see what was happening and saw the commotion. The man in the blue car was trying to pull something off. I saw Molly in shock and fear in the corner, and Adam with his fists up standing right in front of her. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I asked the man. Whoa, what kind of place is this? What's even back there? What are you guys hiding?" "Get out of here, the sign clearly says employees only." "You expect me to just sit here and let you get away with this? No way in hell." We were all in complete shock. Adam tried to calm the man down, however. "Sir, we don't need to get violent, okay? You can just calm down and we don't have to— I don't want to hear another word from you psychos." The man snapped back at Adam. Molly started to cry. She was ready to dart out the store. The man then started reaching for his pocket. We had no idea what he was going to pull out. I tackled the man in the back of the shop and screamed at Adam and Molly to just head away and call the police. A few more minutes of us rustling in the utility room occurred. I managed to headlock the man, but he just kept hitting me off. After a few more minutes of us rustling and fighting in the back, the cops eventually got there. But sadly, they couldn't find him on the scene. We got the man's face on security camera, and his car was still at the pumps. We had both his face and his license plate on camera. Despite all this, the police just left. They couldn't find any sign of him, and they assumed that he just ran out through one of the other back doors. As the cops left, I made sure to dump the man's body right next to the first. As I mentioned before, I was a different man in my past. This job really changed me. It seemed like the man in the blue car clearly noticed the other body I had. Normally it's pretty well hidden. Not even Molly or Adam could find it. But I guess one of the legs must have been sticking out or something like that while I was moving stuff around. I re-looked at the security footage to make sure there was no evidence left behind. It seemed like the man wasn't reaching for a gun or a knife. He was reaching for his phone to call the police. I really didn't want it to be this way, but he knew my secret. The man was now part of my collection. Molly and Adam still have no idea what happened, and you bet I'm planning to keep it that way. They can't find out anything about my past. If they did, they'd be shattered. For now, my secret remains safe from the public eye, and I will ensure no one remembers that day.